How does a career still climbing end at 33 and why are so many people suddenly rewatching the moments that made them fall in love with her work? Kelley Mack's story hits fast, then unfolds in layers. First comes the shock, a clear family announcement, no speculation, no messy rumor mill. Then the part that hurts to say out loud, a rare central nervous system tumor that doesn't play fair and doesn't slow down. But if you stop there, you miss the bigger picture. You miss the years she spent learning the craft from both sides of the camera. The precise choices that made even her short arcs feel lived in. The stubborn decision to keep creating when it would have been easier, maybe even reasonable, to step away. Today isn't about a headline. It's about the road that led to it, the work that survives it, and the questions she wanted us to keep asking after the credits fade. The announcement felt different because it arrived with dignity. No coy language, no sources say, a family, voice, steady, and loving. Affirming that Kelley, known to most viewers as Addie from Season 9 of The Walking Dead, had died at 30. The immediate reaction from fans wasn't confusion. It was a soft, stunned grief. People posted clips. They quoted lines. They reached for the handful of interviews that captured her laugh and her careful way of answering a question. The clarity made it more devastating. There's no mystery to untangle. You're left only with the absence. But the absence is shaped by what came before it. And what came before it is a story of intent. He was one of those kids for whom a camera isn't a gadget. It's a tool. Give one to a child who's hungry to make sense of the world, and you can watch their curiosity become a map. She learned light and composition. She learned how a minor adjustment, a half step, a breath, a glance changes what an image says. That early training didn't push her away from acting, fed it. On sets later, she had a sixth sense for where the frame would land and what the shot could hold. You can feel that in her scenes. The stillness isn't empty, it's a choice. She brings focus, the way a cinematographer brings a lens into sharp relief. The road to recognizable credits was built piece by piece. A short film that caught programmers' eyes, a callback that turned into a gate opening gig, a day player role that led to a recurring presence. She didn't arrive like an explosion. She arrived like weather changing steady, unstoppable. The resume reads like a working actor who never confused noise with progress. Network dramas where every beat counts because you may only get two. Independent thrillers that require you to sell atmosphere with a look rather than a line. Commercial voice work where the magic trick is disappearing completely into the sound of a character, not drawing attention to yourself. It's a collage that, once you stand back, spells out exactly who she was. Multi-hyphenate without the buzzword. Disciplined without being stiff. Ambitious without being loud about it. That's why Addie landed. In a series famous for big swings and big emotions, Kelley carved out space with the opposite approach. Addie watches. Addie reads the room. Addie holds back just enough that when she moves, you believe her arcs live or die on whether the actor treats them like footnotes or like full chapters. She treated hers like a story worth telling on its own terms. Fans noted a lot of characters flash bright in a universe like The Walking Dead and vanish. Addie didn't vanish. She left a mark because she felt like the kind of person you might actually meet if the world fell apart. Guarded, moral, taking inventory of the people around her before deciding who she would be with them. Behind that work was someone who liked building teams as much as she liked taking a bow. Producing credits don't always come with glamour. They come with spreadsheets, schedules, and difficult conversations about what can be done with the dollars available. That she kept taking those on while auditioning and filming tells you what mattered to her. Getting good stories made, not just getting herself on screen. Ask collaborators and you hear variations of the same sentence. She made the room calmer. It can tilt chaotic, then tip into miserable. Some people thrive on that. She steadied it. That kind of presence is quiet power. It doesn't trend, but It changes what's possible. Then the body started shouting in signals that were easy to misread at first. Pain, a nerve that misfires, exhaustion that hangs around after you've slept. What artist doesn't chalk that up to stress? Travel, a life lived half inside audition rooms. But the signals stacked up. Scan showed what no one wants to see. A biopsy added precision to the dread. Diffuse midline glioma. The words are clinical until you watch what they do to a year. They make maps smaller. They redraw priority. They ask you to become a student of folding time, compressing the ordinary things you love into whatever windows your days will allow. If you've never met the term, here's a gentle, clear version. DMG is a fast-moving tumor that grows in the brain's midline structures or along the spinal cord. Because of where it lives and how it spreads, surgeons often can't just remove it. The care plan leans on radiation to slow growth and on medications to manage symptoms. Patients see treatments open a little space to walk again, to speak more easily, to breathe more comfortably, to plan a week instead of a day. But the disease doesn't bargain fairly. That's why these stories can feel so sudden. To the outside world, compress into weeks. A season dissolves. The timeline isn't dramatic writing, it's biology pushing the pace. What stands out in Kelley's case is how she handled the telling of it. She didn't turn her illness into content. She didn't narrate for applause. She gave people just enough to understand the reality. There were surgeries, there was rehab, there were days of learning to move through space with help, then learning. Trust that help, then testing whether the body would give a little more today than it did yesterday. That version of bravery is quiet and relentless. It's not about sound bites. It's about showing up for the next appointment, doing the exercises that feel pointless until they aren't, accepting care when you'd rather be the one offering it. Here's where the story refuses to flatten into tragedy. As life narrowed, the work kept pulsing. Delicate arch dropped on a genre streamer with her front and center. It's the kind of small, smart horror that depends on the lead to. A swirl of tone. She meets the challenge by grounding the premise in a clean, believable, emotional line. That release mattered for another reason. It gave fans a place to go right now to be with her. It gets strange when the person you're grieving is also someone you've watched through a screen. The film became a way to honor without turning mourning into spectacle. And she was still out there talking about another project, independent feature with a title that sounds like a thesis statement. In interviews tied to a festival premiere, she wasn't pedaling slow. She was unpacking why the role mattered to her. A brilliant, socially awkward codebreaker who has to find the music in dense dialogue. A character who asks questions about purpose without sounding like a lecture. It's not an easy line to walk. It's easier to chase plot, quips, and noise. Instead, she chose a story that asks the viewer to lean forward and take part. The way she talked about it reveals a lot about how she saw the job. It wasn't a performance to her. It was an invitation that the human details pulled the narrative down to earth. She loved hiking, which is really just a code name for thinking with your feet. She loved biking and the piano, two ways to feel rhythm, one through air and one through wood and string. She picked up pickleball, the way so many people did, for the simple joy of moving and competing. She was close to her family, and you can hear it in the voice that wrote memorials, precise, affectionate, not trying to sell you anything. When people list the survivors in an obituary, parents, siblings, partner, grandparents can read like a formality. With her, it lands like a map of people who shaped her and will carry the shape she left on them. If you want to understand why colleagues and fans rally, don't just look at the credits. Look at how she carried herself between credits. In an industry that rewards performative chaos, she was a steady signal. That doesn't mean she was meek or small. It means she conserved her noise for the work. Trust actors who don't fling energy everywhere. Trust people who respect their time. Actors trust scene partners who are generous with the moment, not hoarding it for a close-up. The trust she earned doesn't vanish. It loops back as remembrance, as stories told quietly between setup. As a reputation that outlives a career, there's a harsh, practical side to all of this that often gets left out. So let's not leave it out. Illness costs time, money, attention, stamina. When your job depends on being available and presentable on short notice, a diagnosis like DMG is a wrecking ball. You have to navigate insurance labyrinths while fogged by treatment. You have to field questions from people who mean well, but ask the wrong ones. You have to decide how public to be, knowing that transparency can invite exactly the speculation you wanted to avoid. Doing all that while still making art, releasing one film, championing another, shows a kind of stubbornness I can't help but admire. It says, I am more than this diagnosis, and the work we built together is bigger than the box it comes in. Community filled in the spaces the way communities do now. Castmates posted memories. Collaborators wrote about long days that didn't feel long because she kept the room light. Fans stitched together edits that highlight the micro-expressions that made her performances feel true. None of that resurrects a person, but it does a quieter job. It preserves a set of gestures and choices so they don't evaporate. If you've ever lost someone, you know the fear that you'll forget the way they phrased a certain joke, the way they carried a mug, the way they leaned in when you were speaking. Helps with that. So does a fan base that refuses to let moments dissolve. What does legacy even mean when the body of work is small? It means intensity over volume. It means clarity of intent. It means a teenager hearing from festival jurors that her performance was accepted and carrying that not as a trophy, but as permission to keep pushing. It means a young professional choosing roles that require presence more than pyrotechnics. It means showing up prepared and leaving rooms better than you found them. It means using your off-screen time to learn how stories get financed, scheduled, and delivered because you love the ecosystem as much as you love the spot. It means that when the worst kind of diagnosis strikes, you don't let it rewrite the last chapter into something unrecognizable. You keep the voice of the story consistent, even if the themes shift. There's also the wake-up call that her journey leaves behind. Udis whisper, then they speak louder, then they yell. Earlier can matter. Not because early guarantees a happy ending, it doesn't, but because it can open windows where none seemed possible. If you've been ignoring stubborns, consider this your gentle nudge to make the appointment, to ask the impolite follow-up, to request the scan, even if you feel dramatic doing it. We always expect health stories to belong to someone older, someone else. She reminds us that biology isn't reading our scripts. It's easy to turn grief into a ritual of scroll, but there's something better available to you right now. Watch the work. Sit with it quietly. Notice the camera-trained discipline in how she holds a reaction shot a heartbeat longer than most. Notice how she lets silence do a job that dialogue can't. Notice the moments when she makes another actor look better simply by listening well. That kind of attention from a viewer is a form of respect. It treats the scene like a conversation rather than a product. It's also where you'll find the intention she kept returning to in those festival interview stories. As a way to test the big questions about why we're here and what we're for, think, too, about how a career is built. We like to imagine the leap. You're nobody on Monday, and on Friday, your face is on a billboard. The reality is closer to a mosaic. Student films, reels, auditions where you're one of 100 and your name is typed wrong on the sign-in sheet. The gig that doesn't pay but introduces you to a director who will remember you for something that does. The commercial that teaches you to hit beats you didn't know existed. The unglamorous months where your best skill is resilience. Kelley did that work. She treated each square of the mosaic like it mattered, so when the pattern emerged, it had integrity. If you're here because you loved her on The Walking Dead, that love is well placed. But don't stop at the role that introduced you to her. Trace the lines outward. Track how she used calm to create tension, how she used reticence to create intrigue, how she let generosity anchor scenes that could have tilted into showiness. It's the lesson in her performances for anyone who wants to act, direct, or write. You don't have to shout to be heard. You have to be specific. Specificity reads, it travels through the lens and finds people in their living room. There's a tenderness to the way her family chose to celebrate her that tells you what she meant in private. One gathering near the roots that shaped her, another near the city that gave her a professional home. It's a simple symmetry, but it lands. We are made by the places that raise us and the places that let us try. When you honor both, you paint a truer portrait than any resume could dot. So what are we left with? Not closer stories like this rarely offer that, but something close to direction. Keep paying attention. 2. The people you love, to the art that sustains you, to the signals your body sends. Make the thing you've been putting off, because waiting for the calendar to hand you a perfect window is a trick time plays on all of us. If you work in a creative field, be the person who steadies the room. If you watch from the audience, be the kind of viewer who meets the work halfway. Kelley Mack's life reads, in the end, like a string of decisions that add up to a worldview. Choose craft over noise. Choose collaboration over chaos. Choose to keep making things even when circumstances argue against it. Choose to let the big questions live inside the small moments. That's not a slogan. It's a way of moving through rooms, through sets, through friendship, through the shadow of a diagnosis that tried to make everything smaller. She didn't pretend the shadow wasn't there. She just refused to let it own the frame. There will be more stories told about her in the months to come by family, by friends, by colleagues who missed the quiet competence she brought to a day's work. There will be more rewatches where someone notices a detail they missed the first time and says her name out loud to no one in particular. There will be more people discovering her through the releases that arrived in the middle of her fight, and the projects that made it onto festival screens because she helped will them there. That's not consolation, it's continuous. If you've ever loved a performer, you know the odd intimacy of it. They become part of your routines, your background, your shared language with friends. And they go, the world tilts a little. It's the best way to steady it is to keep the conversation with their work alive. Let it make you a little braver. Let it teach you to watch better. Let it remind you that a short arc can leave a long shadow, that a life can be both brief and full, that endings can be unfair and still leave behind something worth carrying. Take a breath. Think of that first question again. How does a career still climbing end at 33 and what did she leave behind? The ending we know. The what is ours to answer. One watch, one conversation, one small act of attention at a time. The measure of a legacy isn't the length of the filmography, it's the persistence of the feeling it leaves in people. And that feeling, in her case, is surprisingly clear. In a noisy world, she made space for nuance. In an impatient industry, she modeled patience. In a year that narrowed, she kept moving. That is what remained. And if you listen closely, the echo of it doesn't sound like goodbye. It sounds like an invitation to live with more intent than we did yesterday. Before you go, I want to hear from you. In one sentence, what's the moment in Kelley's work you'll revisit this weekend? Why? If you met her through The Walking Dead, which scene showed you who Addie really was? If you discovered her through the indie releases, what's one quiet choice she made on screen that stuck with you? Share something hopeful you'd say to her family, just one line of gratitude. If you've walked alongside a tough diagnosis in your own life, what helped? You keep showing up each day. Only share if you're comfortable. Give one emoji that captures how her work makes you feel today. And if someone brand new scrolls into the comments asking where to start, what's your first recommendation? Her Walking Dead arc, Delicate Arch, or the festival feature? I'll be reading. Drop your thoughts below, and let's build a little archive of memory together.